Hey, 42 here. From stealing candy to drinking your dad's booze or accidentally buying the Daily Mail, we've all done things we're not proud of. For many of us, if we do something bad, it's just a matter of running away or deleting our browser history and hoping nobody notices. But throughout human history, many people have lived with the idea that someone, somewhere, is keeping a score, and when we finally do kick the bucket, we'll have to account for all the bad things that we've done. Hell. It immediately conjures up images of flame-filled caves and red-horned demons prodding people with forks. But is this what every religion thinks of, or is it just part of the Judeo-Christian traditions? So, what do other religions believe? Today we look at 6 different versions of hell from around the world, or underworld. Now then, if you lived most of your life on a frozen land, crossing the seas under an arctic breeze, and somebody told you that there was a way to spend eternity in a fiery pit, then you'd probably think it was quite a good idea. Norse mythology had 9 worlds, all connected by the cosmic ash tree, the Yggdrasil. One of the worlds was Niflheim, the Hell of the Norse, a place of freezing cold darkness. It was overseen by Loki's daughter, named Hel, who also conveniently ran Helheim, which was just for regular dead people. Not really bad people or the great warriors who had died in battle, just old regular folk that weren't particularly liked very much. It mainly consisted of estate agents and politicians. Helheim was watched over by a massive eagle called Corpse Eater. One of the other worlds, Muspelheim, consisted of fire and volcanoes and was ruled by fire giants. At the other end of the spectrum was another of the 9 worlds, Asgard, the home of the gods, ruled by Odin. Inside Asgard lies Valhalla, where brave warriors would go to if they died in battle. Zoroastrianism is one of the oldest religions in the world, and still has a few 100,000 believers in India and Iran, as well as some other religious hipsters. You know, the combination of cosmogonic dualism and eschatological monotheism is super retro. You just wouldn't get it. Their supreme being is Ahura Mazda, which isn't a Japanese sports car. And Zoroastrianism has a really unique afterlife belief. Once you die, you must cross the beam-shaped bridge that splits the world of the living and the dead. But your crossing is dependent on your behaviour. If you were a good person, then you got a nice wide bridge and you were met by a beautiful spirit called Dana, who led you off to the House of Song, which sounds like a karaoke bar, and my personal idea of hell, but each to their own. However, if you were a naughty person, then the bridge would be razor thin, and the demon Viserys would push you off and you'd fall into the House of Lies, a filthy place where you'd always be alone, permanently tortured, and fed awful, spoiled food. So basically an NHS hospital. The ancient Greeks loved a good bit of mythology, and their gods were like the cast of a psychotic, horny soap opera. Hades famously ran the regular underworld, but far beneath it, as deep as the heavens were high, was the black pit called Tartarus. It was created out of chaos at the same time as the heavens and the earth, and was mainly used to house things that the gods wanted out of the way, like murderous creatures and Adam Sandler movies. But it was also used to punish people who had really bugged the gods. And rather than a generic off-the-shelf punishment for everybody, there is a unique punishment for each sinner. Sisyphus had to keep rolling a boulder up a hill for eternity. Tantalus was always hungry and thirsty, and Ixion had to spin around on a flaming wheel, which actually sounds quite fun, for a while anyway. Tartarus was also used to imprison many of the Titans after they tried to overthrow the gods. Each Titan was guarded by one of the Hecatoncheires, giants with 50 heads and 100 arms. Some stories say how the Titans were burnt and mankind was actually created out of their fatty smoke, a bit like how Eve was created from Adam's ribs. So, the moral of this story is that whatever your religion is, we were all created from some kind of barbecue. Much like how the Vikings' gods reflected their surroundings, the mythology of Samoa is, as you'd expect from a remote island, very ocean-based. For example, the god of war lived in Olafale Olifi, the house of the octopus, since he was a giant octopus. The entrance to the underworld was found at Fafa, and dead spirits would have to swim west along the cluster of islands until they reached the furthest point on Upolu and threw themselves from the Leaping Stone to swim on out into the afterworld. Fafa housed two entrances. Pulotu led to the Blessed Lands, and Salafi was the Land of the Bound. It was guarded by a giant called Mosu, who apparently jumped from Samoa to Fiji, which is quite impressive. And "May Mosu eat you" is still used as an insult to this day. Next, we head to Mongolia. The country has a long history of shamanism, including special objects and animals and sacrificial altars called avus. In Mongolian shamanism, dead souls are judged by Erkil Khan, the prince of the underworld. He does some quick mental arithmetic and counts up all their good deeds versus their bad ones. If the maths goes against them, as maths tends to do, then they are hurled into Kaziagan, a giant cauldron full of bubbling tar. But all is not lost. The less that they've sinned, the quicker that they rise to the top of the cauldron, and the quicker they can go free to take a shower for a few hundred years, as that tar must be bloody difficult to get off. What's more, you're not in it entirely on your own, since anyone in heaven who benefited from one of your good deeds during your life can send a spirit to drag you up slightly quicker by grabbing onto your hair. Just don't die bald, that's what I'm taking from this. Be good and don't be bald. Die in a wig if you must. Finally, we come to the most chilled religion out there, Rastafarianism. It was founded in 1930 when Haile Selassie became Emperor of Ethiopia. Rastafarianism thinks of Ethiopia as Zion, which is the birthplace of mankind, and so is also heaven on earth. You can enter the Holy Land by literal geographical travel, or in a spiritual way, making the emotional journey before your lazy body actually does get there. Because your body may have slight motivational issues given the enormous mountain of weed you've just gone through. So then, that's heaven. What about hell? Well, hell was actually Jamaica. This is because many Africans ended up in Jamaica due to the slave trade, so understandably it had a lot of negative connotations. Whether it's freezing caves, pushing giant rocks up of hills, or just good old fire and brimstone, at one point we've all wished that whoever just stole our parking space should end up there. Eternal punishment may seem ridiculous to some of us, or very plausible to others. I guess it really depends on how many times you've had to watch Frozen with your kids. Thanks for the view, subscribe for more. 42. Pretty much every shop, restaurant and bar in the world uses a system of secret codes, but in reality, how real is the American president's power? How much power do they really possess?